All right, hey everybody, how's it going? I want to talk today about CI/CD. So I work for Azure, as you probably know by now, and I'm going to talk about this new thing that Azure just came out with called Azure DevOps. So there's a specific piece of DevOps called Azure Pipelines that I'm super into because it's a new CI/CD system. It's fully hosted, and it kind of started for me out like a toy. I always like to check out new hosted CI/CD. I came from this background where I had to run Jenkins clusters and write code at the same time that was going to execute on those clusters. And it was always this like really hard, kind of nightmarish thing because you're writing code and you're hoping that it's going to execute properly the tests on the Jenkins nodes in the cluster. And you're hoping that if it fails, it's actually because the test failed and not because the Jenkins is not configured right. And it just ends up being like this stressful, just kind of almost like a waste of time. Because you're writing the code and you're trying to make sure that the stuff executing and verifying the code is running at the same time. And I kind of called it quits. I didn't want to deal with it anymore back in the day, so I started looking at the hosted stuff. And at the time, you had Travis CI, and I think CloudBees came around and started hosting Jenkins for you. And then we kind of had this explosion. There was Circle CI, and then Circle CI came out with a version 2 that was all containerized. I think maybe there was Team City. Visual Studio Team Services was a Microsoft thing. That eventually got a CI/CD system. GitLab got one as well. BuildKite is still around. They're pretty rad as well. So there's a lot of options out there, and a lot of them are hosted, which means I write my tests, I put some code in a YAML file, and I'm just done. I got a whole GitHub workflow. I can submit a PR. CI/CD will run. Eventually, I write my tests and I write my code, and CI/CD turns green. It means all the tests are passing. I merge, and then everything's running in master. And I can even get my CI/CD system to deploy Docker images or install or roll a new release into Kubernetes or something like that. So the state of the art before Azure DevOps, specifically this thing, Azure Pipelines, the state of the art was pretty good. But I'm super excited about Azure Pipelines because it kind of brings together all these pieces that I am interested in into like one single system. So the pieces, what are the pieces? I want to be able to write everything in my same repo as where my code is. And Azure Pipelines kind of follows what Circle CI and Travis and a bunch of different things have followed. And that's just YAML. So declarative configuration for CI/CD all in one place right next to my code. So that's the first thing. I want code inside of the same repo, CI/CD code inside the same repo as my app code. Second thing, obviously I want it to be hosted, and I want it to be cheap too. Especially for open source. I rate a ton of open source. I would ideally like it to be free because open source is free. A lot of times it's this loose-knit community where no one really has money or is willing to spend money, at least not a bunch of money. And if it's a big group of open source, you kind of have this problem where like, who's paying? What if someone wants to stop contributing? Is the money still going to be coming from somewhere? And if it's not, the project just grinds to a halt, right? So ideally free. I also kind of ideally want it to be from a company that's going to stick around or a provider that's going to stick around. So you've got like cloud providers, or you've got companies that they get money, they earn money from almost certainly like private repositories or companies that are using them, and then they can subsidize free plans for open source projects. And then the last piece, this one's super important for me, is support for Docker. I want to be able to run tests and also run workflows inside of Docker containers, right? Why is that important to me? So the big thing is I've been a maintainer on a bunch of big open source projects. Currently, I'm a maintainer on the Athens project, which, shameless plug, it's a Go module server for the new Go module system. Right, so it's a growing open source project. As we grow, we scale up, and we've got a bunch of new contributors who are trying to set up their local environment. Okay, the local environment is actually kind of complicated because we've got unit tests that don't require anything but the Go toolchain. Then we've got integration tests, which require like kind of external services, like a database and Redis and a couple other things, right? And then we've got end-to-end tests, which kind of require everything, okay? So if we were to tell people, okay, if you want to run integration tests, you have to install a database and Redis, and you have to have the Go toolchain installed. That's 3 big pieces that someone could misconfigure or not install right. It's not their fault. It's that this stuff is all hard to install. And then if you want end-to-end tests, if you want people to be able to run that, forget it. Right? If we've got 10 people, even that's going to be tough. One person's going to set it up this way, another person's going to set it up this way. One of them will be a little bit wrong, and they might both be different than what's going to be run on the CI/CD system. And so one person might be able to push something and CI/CD will pass. The other person might push something, CI/CD will fail. Who's right? Right? If you scale it up to 100 people or 50 people even, forget about it. This is going to be hard, and that's just for integration tests. If you got 2 people trying to put together a system on their local machine to do end-to-end tests, one's going to be wrong at least, probably both, right? So that's where Docker comes in, right? You can ship one container or a group of containers, and you can tell someone to Docker run, or if it's a group of containers, you can tell someone to Docker compose up, right? And you've got some code in your repo that just tells the Docker system on someone's local machine how to run stuff so that everything's configured and the tests can run properly. So that's super awesome because all you have to do then is you just have to tell people, install Docker, run this one command, and you're done. Everything works, right? So we want that to be also supported on the CI system, right? So there are CI systems out there like Circle CI and Travis CI are the ones that pop into my head, and they'll support Docker, but it doesn't really feel like it's native, right? There's kind of some hacks you have to do, like on Travis CI, you have to run a dedicated VM in sudo mode, which is not like the preferred way of doing things on Travis. And Circle CI has really good Docker support, but you can't use the Docker Compose system. You use kind of their own system, which is a lot like Docker Compose, but you end up having to maintain like 2 different YAML files. You've got the Docker Compose file, and that's for local development and testing. And then you've got the Circle CI file, which is super similar to Docker Compose, but they have to be separate because the Circle CI file is what Circle CI supports. Okay, and there are other CI/CD systems out there that are kind of the same deal. They're really powerful, but you still have to have that separate file, which can drift from the Docker Compose file. And so you lose this concept of like the CI/CD system is on equal footing with all the local dev systems. So that's kind of the problem that I'm after. I want to be able to solve that. And Azure Pipelines is super promising because in theory, we should be able to go and do Docker Compose up tests just the same locally as we can on Azure Pipelines. So when I saw this come out, I looked a little bit into it. I saw pretty cool UI. I like that. It's not like a must-have, but for an open source project, kind of is, right? Because you don't want people to go and see some weird UI that doesn't look like it's going to do anything and looks kind of shady maybe. So that's nice. It's kind of especially for the first impression for people joining an open source project, right? Right here, this is what I was looking for big time for containers and Kubernetes. Really containers, but eventually, I love Kubernetes, so eventually I might want to get there. Right, so it says you can build and push images to container registries, but I looked into that a little bit, And I found out you can also run images in containers. So that's cool. I like this a lot. You get 10 free parallel jobs with unlimited build minutes for open source projects. So that kind of checks that box where it's free for open source, and that's pretty good. This particular kind of offering for open source is pretty good, especially that unlimited build minutes, because I don't have to, like, as I scale up an open source project, I don't have to keep in mind like, oh, more contributors means that we're gonna hit like some limit, and we've got to write some stuff to like scale it back or something like that. And also, it's Azure. I happen to work there, so I know like it's a big cloud. It's in the top 3 clouds, right? So Azure's probably not going to go away. I think even if you don't work here, you can probably tell, right? Azure's probably not going to go away. So, you know, if the open source project lives on, which I hope Athens will, and I'm almost positive it will, as it grows and grows and grows, the CI/CD isn't just going to get pulled out from under Athens. That's great, right? So there's some other stuff. Again, container support. As I kind of looked into this more, I saw you can use container jobs to create consistent and reliable builds. That's exactly what I want. So rad. If I want, I can go in and try to do Mac OS X and Windows stuff. I don't need to do that now, but it's kind of nice to know it's there. Again, there's that free thing. That's pretty cool. Awesome integration with GitHub. I actually probably should have said that before, especially for Athens. Athens is all on GitHub. It uses GitHub workflows everywhere. So integration here with like pull requests and stuff, that's awesome. And it even has integration with like those little build badges that you can put in your README. I love that. And then, you know, I can go and explore more. I actually did, but basically when I saw this page and read it all the way through, I was kind of sold, right? I was like, I wasn't completely sold. I was kind of in like trust but verify. So I went over to my boss, Brian, and me and him are working on an education platform built with Elixir. So long story short, Elixir is kind of like a Ruby-like syntax on top of the Erlang platform. So it's built on all the Erlang goodies. That's all you really need to know about Elixir. But we're building it kind of on this new semi-fringe framework and language. And he wrote up a whole blog post with screenshots on how to do all of the setup for Azure pipelines. So then I was like, okay, he got Azure pipelines working with Elixir, kind of like a fringe language. And I bet his setup here, his blog post was like maybe the first time ever that Elixir ran through Azure pipelines. So here's the project. I wanted to look in a little bit more to what he did. So there's 2 things that I was interested in. The first was Docker Compose. All right, so like what did he do to get Docker Compose working so that the Elixir app would actually run against Postgres, because that's what it needs. That was its service dependency. All right, so pretty simple. He launched a Postgres container. He set up the database a little bit. He exposed the standard Postgres port. That's it. Okay, that's the first thing. Second thing, this is the configuration file for Azure pipelines. Right, so it's kind of like if you use Travis, it's like the travis.yaml. And if you use CircleCI, it's like the CircleCI.yaml. All right. So this is what it looks like. Okay. So he's using Ubuntu 16.04, kind of a standard Ubuntu. It's not the newest one, but it's more or less standard. Right. He's setting up an image name for the Docker image, and then he's doing Docker Compose up. That is for the Postgres. Then he's doing a Docker build. And he's doing a build on the dockerfile.test, and I'll show that in a second. And he's calling that test, okay? And then the next thing he's doing is he's Docker building the actual image that represents the, what am I looking for? Oh, that represents the app, the Elixir app, okay? So then finally, the last thing, that dockerfile.test. All right, so this is the big dog. So this is the thing that's going to install all the Elixir stuff. That's all like around here. And then down here, he's installing dependencies, he's compiling, and then he's testing. So that's exactly what I want to do. I want to be able to start stuff up, I want to be able to test, and then I want to be able to tear stuff down. All right, so what I'm going to do today, I'm heading over to my tiny little Go library. In the Go library, basically, it's running HTTP servers in the background so that you can run Go tests for any Go app kind of against those servers that you run. And then you can inspect kind of what requests went to those servers. Okay. So a little bit of sample usage, you can kind of get the feel for what this thing is for. And what we want to do, we want to run these tests. There's a bunch of tests in here. They don't have any external service dependencies. We don't need an external MySQL running or anything. But we're going to use Docker Compose to run the tests. So you don't need to have the external stuff running, but you could, because you just add a line to the Docker Compose. Okay, I'm going to reload the page. And here's the Docker Compose. Right, so pretty simple. We're going to run a Go 1.11 image. We're going to obviously run Go test. We're going to run it inside of the right place in our Go path, and that's the Go path. Okay, so what does this look like? First of all, we could run things locally. And that's pretty simple. I actually ran the tests already. Nothing changed since the last time I ran it. So these were cached. Okay, but let's look at the README. Head over there. And the README says we can run this command to run our tests. Okay, so let's do that. Clear the screen, make things a little bigger. And we're going to run our tests. Oops. What is it called? Test. So there we go. Same deal. And then I can run a Docker Compose down project test serve down. That's going to take all of it down, and we'll run it again so that we don't have this cached. There we go. So we ran the tests off of, there was no Docker container there, therefore, of course, there was no cached code, and we're good to go. Cool. So we've got that done. We know we can run Docker Compose. We can run the tests inside of a Docker Compose container, and we're kind of off to the races for the local development story. So now, like I was saying before, our challenge is to get this working on Azure pipelines. That's where Brian's blog comes in. So we're going to head over there. Let's get started. So I'm going to head over to the GitHub Marketplace. I'm going to set up Azure pipelines. Let's see what he does next. Set up a plan. He clicks on that. I think he chose free. There you go. And he clicked on install it for free. So let's do that. That's going to give us Linux, Mac, or Windows with 10 free parallel jobs. That's pretty rad. That's like way more than I need for this particular repo, because I'm the only person who does any kind of development on it. So let's install for free. Okay, let's see what he did next. Install for free. And then he clicked complete order and begin installation. So I'm going to do that. $0. I love it. He clicked on that, and then let's see what happened next. It looks like he didn't put a screenshot there, so I'm going to go and I'm just going to say all repositories, because maybe in the future I might have other repos under my personal account that I want to set up Azure pipelines for. So that's all good. Maybe in the future, if I had another organization in GitHub, maybe I would only want Azure pipelines to work on one or a few repositories in there. But I'm good on my personal account, my personal repositories, to just let Azure pipelines go nuts on all my repos. So I'm going to do install, enter my password here. And now, let's see, it's going to redirect me over to Azure DevOps. Let's see, my organization, I think it's this. Let's see what he does. Yeah. And select a project. Let's see, I think it's MS Azure Visual Studio. I've got a lot of things going on in here. So let's see if I can just create a new organization. There we go. That looks a lot more like what he does here. He says, after auth with my Azure account, I needed to create a new project. Projects in Azure DevOps are conceptual containers that host a single repo and its build procedures. So this screenshot looks a lot like what I'm doing here. So does he put no, he does the actual repo name. Oh, no, he does the org name in GitHub. So what he's doing here kind of corresponds with this. This is the organization name with a bunch of repos below it. So I am going to name my organization name AR Schless, because that is the organization name, kind of my personal organization name in GitHub. So I'm going to do that. Let's see what he does next. He hosts it in West US 2. Same thing I'm going to do. There you go. And then name my project. And I'm going to call this, I think I'm just going to follow what he does and call it AR Schless. And let's see. Projects are conceptual containers that host a single repo and its build procedures. So actually, he says projects are for a single repo. So I'm going to call this test serve. I'm not sure exactly what that means, what I'm going to end up with, but I'm okay with it for now. If I need to, I'll go and create another one later. But we're going to go with this for now. Continue. And while this does its thing, I'm going to go see what he does next. After creating the project, I need to pick a repository. Let's see. It's going to maybe take a little while. And I'm going to go back to close this out. If you've watched my videos before, you know that lots of tabs make me crazy. So let's go back here. And I'm going to go back to Azure Pipelines to see a working example in case I need it. Okay, so what does he do next? He picks a repository. So I'm looking for test SRV, and let's do this. Ooh, where am I here? Showing the most recently used repositories where you are a collaborator or organization member. If you can't find the repository, make sure you provide access. So I clicked there. All repositories. Let's see, maybe that was what I needed to do. Save. Going back here. Create a new organization. I'm going to do this. West US 2. Oh, I got to select an existing. Maybe it's there already. There we go. That's mine. And I think I called this test serve already. All right, so we're going to go back to this. Let's see. Let's see if my repo is here. Yes. All right. So I'm not sure. I had to change it back to like only allow a single repo. I'm not sure what the difference was because I said all repos, but I didn't see all the repos. So I don't know what's going on there. Could be a bug, but I bet I did something wrong. But anyway, we're here. I've got test serve going. I'm going to click it and I'm going to go back here. And what happened? He chose the repository. Then the wizard suggested a Docker pipeline for this Elixir project, which suits him fine. So I think that happened with me too. Yeah. He said a Docker image. That suits me too because I want to run everything inside of Docker. So I'm clicking that. And what happened next? The last step was to create Azure pipelines.yaml and put it into the root of the repo. So that's the same deal for me. So I'm going to set up my image name, test srv. I think that's what he did too. Yep. Go for stacks, build.buildid. That's what I got. And I'm going to do docker compose. It's the same thing as the readme, actually. Actually, it was test. And I'm just going to copy it into here. And I think he did more. Yeah. So he did a multi-line script, docker compose -p site up, and then he did a docker compose down. And I don't need this step because I'm already running my tests inside of the docker compose. All right, so I'm just going to do the pipe, docker compose test serve up test, and then docker compose, and then -p test serve down. So the -p that I'm using here, namespace is all of my docker compose stuff inside of a test serve. It's called a project. So I'm saying I want all my stuff. Whoops. I want all of my docker compose things, containers and networks and files and volumes and everything that's in my docker compose file. I want it all to be namespaced under test serve. And then when I do a down, that means everything namespaced under test serve that I created, I want it to be torn down. Okay. So the next thing he does, I gotta indent this and this. And then the name, I'm gonna call it test just like he did. Cool. After some experimentation, he creates 2 steps. The first runs the test, the second builds the Docker container. I don't need to build a Docker container because I'm a library. I'm not like a binary that I want to run, unlike what this project is. As is the case, every time I create a new CI environment, it took 40 commits to get the Docker networking and database config set up right. So I don't need to do that, thankfully, this time. So that's really good for this screencast because you all don't have to watch me fail 40 times. Although in the future, I'm sure for other projects I will. So I don't have to deal with database config or Docker networking. That's great. But I am going to save this. And this should save directly to my GitHub repo. So I'm going to do a save and run. I'll leave these commands because I bet I still probably will mess something up. Let's do that. And it's going to commit the Azure pipelines.yaml to the root of my repo. I'm going to commit it directly to the master branch because I'm just getting this stuff set up. I'm not really going to do a pull request. I think in a bigger repo, like I'll eventually probably do this with Athens. And in that repo, I would never commit directly to master. I would start a pull request. So I'm going to put in here, just getting started with Azure pipelines. Not going to do a PR right now. Sorry. There we go. Save and run. So presumably this is going to save this file to my GitHub repo, and then I'm going to go and it's going to start running it. So cross your fingers. Configuring. I think by now it should be in the repo. Let's check it out. Yeah, there it is. And look, it even said Azure Pipelines set it up. So agent is ready for the job. So I read a little bit about this. So agents are, I believe they're kind of almost like VMs, but I love that I don't have to manage them. And so it looks like it's just a VM that has a little agent on it. The agent gets a signal from, presumably gets a signal from the Azure pipelines, some probably kind of master service or director service. And once it got the message, it started running the script in my Azure pipelines. And that's pretty cool. So now it's pulling the Docker image. I hope that in the future, like the next build, I hope that this thing is going to be cached. But it's inside of the cloud, so it downloads a little faster than on my local machine. Let's see, download the file. Now it's creating the test image. Wait for that to finish. All right, it created the test image, attached. Let's go back. That was pretty fast. Nope. Go back to the test. There we go. Attached to it. Here's where the tests will run. Exited with code 0. It's great. And then this is where the Docker Compose down took over. It removed the container. It removed the network, and it passed. And then post job, it looks like it got some sources. Yeah. Cleaned out caches, and success. Okay. That's pretty rad. So I'm going to close this down. So that was cool. Looks like this thing worked on the first try, so hats off to me. So I want to see if he did anything else. Finished. I didn't have any tests fail. But let's actually try that. Let's fail some tests and see if Azure Pipelines runs again and fails. So I did some changes to the README. Let's see, I put the right Docker compose target in docs, commit that, and then I'm going to fail a test too. So let's go over here. I'm just going to go down here. Let's see what happens when we fail a test in Azure Pipelines. Save that. I'm going to commit it. Put a little commit message in there, commit to master, and then I'm going to push this up. Oops, I forgot that I have to pull down the Azure Pipelines file. Okay, great. Now let's push it up. Almost there. Come on, come on, come on. Cool. All right, now let's go back. Let's go back to the pipelines here. And where do I see my builds? CI build for GitHub. That looks like the most recent one. There we go. Initialize agent, initialize jobs. I saw this stuff before. It's got the sources. And, oh, it's got to pull the image again. So hopefully, and this would be cool if eventually I get caches. I don't know if I will. But I bet pulling from Azure Container Registry will be faster. So maybe in the future I'll mirror this Golang image on ACR. And I'll put a link to ACR in the show notes too, in case you're curious what that's all about. So it did download, seems like a little faster, but I didn't measure. And now we're on again to creating the Docker container. Remember that's namespace. This is how Docker Compose does namespacing. Created the container. Hey, there's the failure. Oh, let's go back. There's the failure, but it didn't fail. And I think there's a way to do that in Docker Compose. Docker Compose failure code. I think there's a flag to respect the error. Run. There we go. Somewhere in here, it's going to allow me to have Docker Compose fail if the actual thing inside that Docker Compose is running fails. Doesn't look like it's here. Let's go back to here, command line reference, and I'm going to go to run, publish, blah, blah, blah. I'm just kind of skimming to see if anything pops out here. Gets Docker compose to fail if the container failed. This is kind of my process, is I just like kind of go in and search really quick for different things to see if something pops out. Failed to start my SQL container. That looks kind of promising. Let's see. There's the compose file. It gets an error. Container is created. You told Docker. That didn't help. Where am I now? User, no deps, remove, service ports. I wonder if it's in the global options. Scroll up to the global options. File, project, host, compatibility. All right, well, I'll have to get that done eventually. But I'm actually gonna move on to, I'm gonna move on to figuring out how to get a build badge. And then I'll come back to this because I really wanted to get the build badge onto my repo as well. So it's not as big of a deal as like this, because this would be great to actually fail the build. But I want to make progress somewhere. So I'm gonna move on to getting the build badge, and I'm gonna come back to this in this screencast. So Azure Pipelines build badge. Now remember, you can do this somewhere, but I don't remember where. Oh, and you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go back to Brian's project, and I'm just gonna straight up copy what he put in the README. So I'm gonna go to raw. There it is. So I'm literally just gonna copy this over to my README, and then I'll mess with some things. Build status, dev.azure.com, go for snacks. So mine was ar/tests srv, APIs build status, go for snacks.site. I bet this is testserve.site. And I'm gonna do the same thing here. Let's see if it works. I can actually probably do it here and see. Build setup now. Yeah, well, at least it just goes to the repo, or the project. So I'm gonna commit that. Go to commit to master. And actually, just for good measure, I actually want to find where to get my build badge. So test serve, dashboards, let's see. I see something there. Build badge. Build badges embedded into the homepage of a repo are a common way to show the health of a repo. We added a new way to help construct. The new URLs allows users to publish a per branch status. You can get the markdown of the new status badge URL by selecting the status badge menu action in the new builds page. That's cool. It has a link to it. New builds page. So let's go back. The builds page is here. Where is the screenshot? Put that next to it here. In the new builds page, and let me just go back. I think it said somewhere, select the status badge menu action. Okay, where is the menu? Maybe it's here. There we go, status badge. There's the markdown. So I believe this is the same thing. Copy it to the clipboard. And I'm literally just gonna put it right below. We can kind of do a visual diff. Yeah, there we go. Status ar/testserve. That was a little different. So I'm gonna, Yeah, it looks like this is different than this. But I got this part right. So that was cool. My guessing game almost worked. Let's delete this. Oops. I'm going to delete this whole thing, that whole line. And there we go. Build succeeded. Okay. That's what I expected. Even though the thing failed, I expected the build should succeed. So use the real build badge, not the one I stole from Brian Couchson's blog post. Okay, so let's do another git push just so I make sure this stuff is on the remote. And almost there. Okay, cool. All right, so we're gonna go back now. This shouldn't have failed. So that's back to this deal. Go back to our logs. Just for a quick reminder, the tests failed, but the build didn't fail. Because we want to have Docker Compose actually fail if something inside exited non-zero. Okay, so there it is, it exited with code 1. So I need to go back to, I'm not going to spend time right now like trawling through the Docker Compose CLI docs because that's kind of boring in a screencast. But I'm going to get creative on doing searches. So Docker Compose exit codes. I kind of thought of that just now. And let's see. How to deal with exit codes. Sounds promising. Generate a Docker Compose. Our CI server will only deploy if the test script exits 0, but Docker Compose always returns 0 even if one of the container commands failed. Sweet. That's exactly our problem. And it looks like there's this thing, exit code from. You can do exit code from service, and it will return the exit code of the selected service container. That also implies abort on container exit. So documentation, I want to find out where to set this, how to set this, and also what does this mean. All right, so, oh yeah, I had missed this. Exit code from, because we are using up, I believe, and not run, right? Yeah, we're using up. Okay, so I had searched Docker Compose run documentation. I should have been searching up documentation. All right, so exit code from service, and let's start with that. So we know we can use that. Abort on container exit means we will stop all containers if any container was stopped. So that's fine because we only have one container. So really I'm just going to set this. So let's do that. Let's go in here into our README first. We're going to go down here and then we're going to do exit code from test. And then this is the target to run. I'm not exactly sure if this is going to work because of the ordering. So let's see. Yeah. And let's see what the status code was. Yeah, okay. That's what we want. And there's this warning now. I probably should just set this to get rid of the warning. I know it implies it, but it'd be cool to like be explicit and not, whoops. It'd be cool to be explicit so we can get rid of this warning. Let's see, abort on container exit doesn't take any arguments. So I'm going to set that. And again, like I'd rather be explicit so that the command says exactly what's going on. And I don't have that warning every single time. So let's try it again. I'm going to do a Docker Compose. Whoops, can't type. -p test serve down. Okay, and we're going to copy and paste that in. There we go. All right, again, let's just make sure one last time. Cool. Okay, one last thing I'm going to add to the README, just to make sure. if you do the docker compose command, make sure to clean up afterwards. Docker compose -p test serve down. Okay, so I'm going to commit this. I'm going to push it up, and then I want to watch Azure pipelines actually fail before I fix that test. Because remember, right here, I failed the test. Like, no matter what happens, for everything here up, even if all this stuff is fine, I still want to fail. So, add to the README instructions on how to fail Docker compose. All right, so I added it to the README. That one last thing I've got to do is add it to Azure pipelines. So let me just copy everything from the README that I know works, and I'm going to just put it into here, save that, and this is going to be using the write command in Azure pipelines. Commit that, and then let's push it up. So while this is going, let's see, what I expect now is in the README, this thing should become red, say like build failed. And then in here, I want to go back to builds, and this thing now is running, so that's my build. And this thing eventually is going to have to fail. That's what I expect. Okay. So I noticed like initialize job, these three things are going a lot faster now. There's like under a second for initializing the agent, a little over a second for initialize job. So that's cool. That's really cool. It doesn't look like we have this cached still, so I'll have to look into that after the screencast, see what happens there. So I would assume after this fails, hopefully this fails, I would assume this test little icon is going to be red. Creating the container. This actually kind of looked like it was a little faster actually, but I'm not going to obsess too much about that anymore. Oh, what happened? What happened? What happened? Aborting on container exit, removing test serve. Oh, you know what? I bet I have to do one of these. I probably have to and them together so that this will fail. If this fails, then this will also fail, so that the whole script fails. That's just a shot in the dark, but let's see what happens. And you know what? Before I'm going to do this, I'm actually going to read some docs on it, because that's like the responsible thing to do, right? Even though I never do it. Documentation. Do I have any documentation? There we go. First pipeline. First build, status badge. Let's see if there's the reference. YAML schema, that's cool. Pipeline, repository, job. Let's see if I can find the script. There it is, script. Display name, contents of this the script to run. Do I have anything here? Continue on error, Boolean. True if the future step should run, even if this step fails, defaults to false. Okay. So I'm guessing that if this whole script needs to fail, even if one step in the script doesn't fail, I bet the whole script needs to fail. So how about this? Why don't I try doing one of these? And I'm just going to create another script. I'm not sure if this is going to work, but I'll call it display name, clean up. And let's see. So I think what's going to happen is continue on error is going to, yeah, it defaults to false. So if this thing fails, then the whole thing should fail. I'm not sure if it's okay that we don't clean up, but I'm guessing that well, I'm hoping that the whole worker agent cleans up on its own. But we shall see. I think the way that we'll see is if we run two tests, one after the other, the second Docker Compose should fail because we're launching the same service name or the same Docker Compose project name. So let's see. Make the build fail. Make the Docker Compose run fail. Even if cleanup doesn't. That's not completely accurate, but oh well. So let's push up again. And whoops, I had a typo there. Fix typo. So actually, before I push this though, I'm gonna go back to my builds. And I'm gonna see this. I believe I had a typo there, I think. My bash is a little rusty. I believe I had a typo there, and I'm gonna see what happens. If I did have a typo, this should fail. Yeah. Okay, at least we got a failure. So unexpected end of file. It's kind of what I expected, right? Because if I look at my history here, in this typo, I was doing and then slash, which means bash should expect something next, but it didn't have anything next. So it said, well, where's the rest? And there was no rest. So that's a failure. Now let me git push this up. So actually, before I git push, I want to go back to my repo. I'm going to reload it. Yes, it says failed. Okay, so now the deal is I fixed the bash script. So now I should be running a Docker Compose. The test itself should fail because we still have this deal going on. So I should still get a failure. I should still have this thing be read after I reload the page again. And then the commit after that, I'm going to fix this and then it should go back to green. It's kind of like test-driven development, except I'm trying to get my CI to fail. So let's push it. And almost done. There we go. Now we're going to go back to our builds and wait with bated breath. Okay, preparing agent. Great. Come on, come on. Okay, initializing. This stuff seems to be going faster. I love it. Just had a cold cache, I guess. Okay. Yeah, it looks like I was able to do another test serve project, even though the last time we didn't get to the cleanup. Actually, did we? I'm going to go back and see. This was the failure. Yeah, cleanup was skipped. So yeah, even though we didn't get to the cleanup, it was all good because the next project tried to start another Docker Compose with the same project name and it was okay. So that's nice to see. We're gonna go back here. The tests are almost ready to run, it looks like. Okay, cool. Creating the file. Yes, all right. That is what we expected. Cool, cool, cool. So I'm gonna reload one more time, make sure that build tag, the build icon is still red. It is. Okay, so Brian said that he had to fumble a little bit to get Docker networking working. I didn't have to get Docker networking working, but I still fumbled. So yeah, you see me fumble. I have no secrets. So we're gonna get rid of this. Now that the test isn't failing, now our CI should succeed. So let's see, removing fake test failure. Now we should have CI succeed. Yay! Okay, let's do another git push. Cross your fingers. Git push is almost done. Okay, let's go back to our builds. Got a new one. Do we? There we go. Agent ready. KK. Cool, cool. Get sources. I love that this seems to be getting a little faster. Maybe something's warming up in the background. I actually have no idea how this is implemented. I'll find out someday, I'm sure. But yeah, I have no idea what's going on in the background implementation wise. But I don't know if it's just me. Maybe it's my optimism or something. But at least these first 3 steps seem to be getting faster. So something's probably cached in the background by engineers who built this who are much smarter than I. So all right, creating the container. This seemed to go faster too. There's something cached maybe. Alrighty. Passed, cool. The cleanup was all good, cool. All right, so this should go from build failed to build succeeded. Let's make sure it goes to the succeeded build. Okay, so that was 2018-09-12.7. This was the one we were just on, also the same build, so that's awesome. Okay, so very last thing, and then you don't have to watch me fumble around anymore and we'll be all good to go. Very last thing, I'm gonna submit a pull request and I wanna see Azure Pipelines say the status of my build on the pull request. I have no idea how this is gonna work either, but let's see. So we're gonna do a git fetch, and then we're gonna do a git checkout test fail against the origin master branch, clear the screen. And there we go. So git status, we're on a test fail. So now we're gonna do that same thing. I want to do a failed test. Okay, what happens when we fail on a pull request? I'm gonna save that. I'm gonna commit it. Let's say it's a sample PR failure. Okay, push up to that new branch. What happened? There we go, cool. Oh, that's a new thing from GitHub. They even call out that I can create a pull request. Cool, cool. Thanks, GitHub. So I'm gonna go back to my repo. Got this nice little thing here. We're gonna do a sample PR failure. I'm gonna create the pull request. And hopefully there will be a status reported here. Maybe not. Is there gonna be a build going on here? Okay, cool. Sample PR failure is running. For some reason it's not. There we go. It just took a little bit. Okay, so let's click details here and hopefully it will take me to the PR. Okay, now this is cool. I've heard about this. I've never actually seen it in progress, or in real life, I mean. GitHub checks. I think Travis CI has GitHub checks integration, but it's not. I don't think it has this level of detail. I could be wrong. So if I am, sorry, Travis CI. I love you guys, just to be clear. But I haven't seen it in this level of detail. So it's cool. I can click on view more details. It'll even open a new tab for me. I expect this test to fail. It's taking a little bit. But once this test fails, I think in the checks, this will turn into a red dot. Okay, it failed. Now, I'm not sure if it does it automatically, so I'll just reload. Still in progress. There we go. So this is what I love about checks. I can click rerun from here. Whereas I think previously, I know in Travis previously, this wasn't around. Not sure if it is now. But it's cool because I don't have to go over to Azure Pipelines and like rerun the test. I'm not sure if I can. I think it's somewhere in here. Yeah, rebuild. So I don't have to go into Azure Pipelines to do it. I can stay in GitHub and just click rerun. That's a pretty common thing that I want to do, especially as my test suite grows. If I have like flaky tests that maybe there's some setup that sometimes will succeed and sometimes will fail, I don't have to worry about like going over to my CI system, a separate system, and clicking rebuild. I don't even necessarily have to learn that UI. I can just kind of maybe click over here and see the logs in that UI. I think I can even click here. Yeah, and it'll just take me to the logs, which is nice. There's still a little bit of UI I kind of have to learn, but at least I don't have to navigate around too much. And then of course I just click back. What does this do? Yeah. So it's kind of the same deal. I'm going to go back to the conversation view. Oops, sorry, I'm going to go back to the files changed view. In this case, obviously it's pretty easy to see what's going on. I would imagine in a bigger PR, you can kind of look and see, where's the failure? We do that a lot in Athens and in some previous projects I worked on too. And I think here, yeah, this should be failed as well. So now I'm going to fix it. Again, pretty straightforward. I'm going to go here, fix it. But before I commit and push this, I just want to make sure that the master branch is still green. So I'm going to go over here, just reload the page. Yeah, so this confirms what I thought. So Azure Pipelines gets the difference between like the master branch, which is what I wanted here, between the master branch and PR branches. So all my PRs can be failing, but it'll still know, yeah, the master branch build is still okay. And that's super nice because that's kind of the way I like to develop, and that's a big way that lots of people on GitHub like to develop. They keep some branch, usually the master branch, clean, meaning no failures, ready to ship. And then in PRs, they do stuff. Some of them break, some of them don't. And presumably, when a PR is successful, all the checks, all the CI, everything, then they'll merge it in, and the master branch build will start, or a branch, the default main branch build will start. And then that might do more testing, or it might do, the standard suite of tests or whatever. And then it will probably do releases. So that would be the continuous delivery part of this whole thing. Cool. All right. So back to my local code. Now this should fix the build. I'm going to commit and push that. Going to do a commit. Let's push it. Clear the screen there. Come on. Cool. It's pushed. Go back to my pull requests. Go here. And it looks like Azure Pipelines doesn't immediately record the webhook status. So that would be cool if that was a little faster, but that's all right. I'm not too worried about it. As long as, in a project, people know, hey, you have to wait for the pull request status to pop up. So while that's running, I'm going to close some tabs here. I don't know why, just having a lot of tabs open drives me crazy sometimes. Close this up. And click it on details again. Should take me to the checks. I'm going to do a few more details. There's my test running. So I would imagine over time, this will probably get faster. I'm not sure because the underlying Azure pipeline system doesn't have a ton of control over, what I'm trying to do here, the Docker Compose. I could be trying to do something that takes 55 minutes or, an hour or whatever. And they probably don't have a lot of control because I could just be sleeping for an hour, right? So who knows? I don't know what exactly can be done here. But it's enough for me. I love it. So good enough for me. All right, so we have a green build, succeeded. Reload that. Still record in progress. Now it's a success. Awesome. Go back here. Everything says it's successful. Go back to my files change. Nothing has changed. I'm still going to merge this just because why not? I love squash and merge, so I'm going to do one of those. So now if I go back, now it says merging can be performed. That's cool. I haven't actually tried out GitHub's merging can be performed automatically. I haven't looked up like how to do automatic merges, but I'll do that for another day. I'm gonna do a squash and merge, confirm, merged. I can delete the branch. I just like doing that to clean things up. Going back to here. So this is cool. So a new build should have been kicked off. Yeah, it's kicked off. There's a little play button. But this badge hasn't gone to, if the build were to fail on master, hopefully it won't. But this hasn't changed because the master build that got kicked off when I merged the PR, that master build hasn't failed yet or succeeded yet. It hasn't finished yet is my point. I'm going to go over to here again. This will be the last time in this screencast that we watch one of these console outputs. All right. Taking a little while. Maybe we're on a fresh agent that hasn't booted up yet or something like that. There we go. Create that container. This is cool. Now I'm seeing this thing doesn't take forever to download it. Probably it's cached. I don't know where, but engineers working on Azure pipelines, thank you. You saved me tons of time. I love that. Succeeded, tests, cleaned up. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Now obviously, go back here. This is a green check mark, great. If I reload this, nothing should happen to this build type. But if I go over, this now takes me to the most recent build. 2018-09-12.10. 2018-09-12.10. Awesome. So now I confirm that even before I reloaded the page, this thing is taking me to the latest build that has succeeded, or if it failed, it will take me to the latest build that failed. So now obviously if I reload, it's going to take me now to the most recent build too. And there it is. 2018-09-12.10. Sweet. Okay. So that is it for me today. That was a lot that I dumped on you. But I'm going to keep the most important stuff in the show notes. So just a little bit of what to expect in the show notes. If you go to dev.azure.com, and I'll have a shortened link for you there as well. Dev.azure.com, if you're logged in, it will take you to your kind of dashboard for Azure DevOps. And Azure DevOps is more than like just Azure pipelines and builds. There's like, you can do a Git repository. It's kind of separate from GitHub, more for the enterprise type of use case. I think it has like Kanban style tracking. Let me search here. I can give you the little sales pitch here. Azure DevOps services. So yeah, we've got boards. It's kind of like Kanban style tracking. We looked all and like hung out with pipelines for probably more than an hour now. Repos, that's kind of the GitHub thing I was talking about. Artifacts is, I think it has NuGet, so C#, package storage, and Maven, so Java, Scala, Clojure type of all the JVM ecosystem, package storage, basically jars. I don't remember. I think there's some other package storages too, and I think that there's like generic object storage as well. So I think like you can host zips and stuff, but I could be totally wrong about that. I only looked at it super briefly, so if I am wrong, correct me in the comments. And then test plans I haven't looked into at all, but I've seen a screenshot, and I think that's you can lay out manual testing steps and have someone go through and verify that this build has succeeded in my manual testing. I'm not sure if it does more than that, but if you check it out, awesome. I think it will help many people who are building UIs, whether web or native on a platform. One last thing I want to call out about pipelines. Obviously, like I said, you can do Docker Compose natively, local and in pipelines. But also you can do it on multiple platforms. I think I mentioned that in passing at the beginning. But you get Windows, obviously it's Microsoft, Linux, which we executed on Ubuntu, and Mac, which is obviously super nice if you're doing like an Xcode project or something like that. So definitely check that out. I super highly recommend pipelines, especially if you're an open source project, because you get 10 concurrent builds and you get unlimited build minutes, which basically is unlimited builds. So if you've got 11 pull requests, that 11th will just get queued behind the 10 that are executing concurrently. So unless you're like Kubernetes with some massive, massive project, your build times, if you've got a bunch of contributors, they're going to be pretty decent, right? If you got 1,000 contributors and they're all contributing, between 9 to 5 in a certain time zone, you might have some problems. You might need to expand the number of concurrent builds, and that'll cost some money, obviously. But I highly recommend you give it a try. Put it in a pull request, something I'm going to do for Athens, and play around with it. It's super, super interesting, and I would highly recommend it for you to check out and evaluate sort of alongside of the other providers like Travis and Circle CI and stuff like that. Cool. So that's going to be it for me today. Check out the show notes. I'm going to have links to pipelines, links to this page, links to, I mentioned Azure Container Registry before. I'll have links out to Travis CI, Circle CI, as many things that I can humanly remember what I talked about today. So that's it for today, and I will see you next time. Take care, everybody.